guys! Welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new legal advice content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
First one is titled, "This man/kid keeps flying a drone over my house with eggs attached to it that gets released on my property. I have a specific question regarding something I want to do and need to know the legal aspect to it. Just to be clear, I am not asking how to break the law. I am asking what will happen if I take down his drone, that's all. The police officer told me he can't go and knock on every house in the neighborhood investigating if they're the ones doing this, which is understandable, I guess, and that I have to know where the drone comes from first for him to do anything. Honestly, at this point, I want to buy anything and take the drone out with it when it comes on my property again. If the kid sues for the cost of the drone, then I'm willing to pay. This, of course, will reveal his identity so I can counter-sue, right? I'm sure he's breaking a lot of laws. Thing is, I want to make sure that he can't sue for any ridiculous emotional distress or any other crap he might claim, but only for the cost of the drone. Location for the bot, Ohio. Edit. Follow-up question. The drone has a camera. If I end up being on YouTube, can I sue him for that? Edit 2. Taking out his drone is not an option now, as you pointed out it might be a felony. Update. I would like to thank you guys for the help and all the creative ideas you have proposed in the original thread. Sorry for not updating you right away, as I was really impacted by the death of a very close person in my family. So here's what happened. I liked one of the comments here where it said to see if there is anyone who fly drones as a hobby willing to use his drone for me for $1,000 instead of me paying for a whole new drone. Figured just like you guys said, it would make someone stay to fly a drone as a hobby and also get paid. I hired a guy, which I'll call him Frank. After waiting for 3 days in my house every morning, the drone finally flew to us, but apparently when the other kid saw the other drone take off, he went crazy and tried to hit it or take it down, which he did, which resulted in the kid's drone and Frank's drone both to go down broken on the ground. A few minutes later, this kid came running to the house, whom I recognized lives a couple of blocks away, and started whining about how we flew our drone in his way and crashed it, blah blah blah. We went and spoke to his dad and showed him all the footage and explained all the crap his son has caused. Shockingly, he was completely understanding. He told me he would put me through one of his lawyers so that they would offer both Frank and I a settlement if I agreed not to sue. I called my lawyer, and we all met a week later, and he reimbursed Frank for his drone plus way more money than I would have ever paid him. He also wrote me a check for what his son has caused under the condition that I won't pursue any legal action. It was a happy ending, and I was quite shocked of his father's reaction and his willingness to pay for everything his son has caused, but I must admit that I feel sad knowing that his dad is definitely the one enabling him to do so. Never have I felt his dad was mad about anything his son did. While we were there discussing what happened, his dad received a phone call, and then shortly after ending it, he started telling his son what the other party was saying, and they both started making jokes about the caller. So the whole thing made me feel that his dad was like, "Mate, just another day. My son caused damage, and I'll just have to pay those people here for this to go all away." Next one is titled, "Neighbor installed road over my property. Location equals Nebraska." Hello guys. I have a cabin in Nebraska on a decent piece of property that I sometimes go a year without visiting. Anyway, my property is 160 acres total, and I have 4 40-acre lots that line up. Most of it is heavily wooded, except a small clearing close to one of the roads that borders it, where the cabin is. I have 2 neighbors to my east, one of which had the same setup as me, and the next has, I don't know how much, but the north/south line is the same as mine and my immediate neighbor. For the sake of visualization, let's number the lots 1 through 4 going north to south. My cabin is in number 4, and my neighbor had a cabin in his number 4 as well. He recently sold his 1, 3, and 4. 3 and 4 to the same person, and 1 to someone different that built a house there as well. Well, he kept 2, and he built a house on 2. Since he didn't have any access, and the people that bought his land didn't want to let him go through their land, he decided to install a road through my woods. He cut a J-shaped road through my 1, alongside his former 1, that hooked into his 2, and also went into my 2. In order to do this, he cut down a few dozen trees, filled in a pond, and built a bridge over a small stream. The path is about 9 feet wide, give or take, and has a thick coating of gravel on it. The bridge he built seems to be up to spec. At least it doesn't look like it's about to fall down. When I confronted him about this, he told me that since it had been there for more than 60 days, I have no rights to tell him to stop using the road he built, nor can I block him from using it. I tried putting a fence up across it. I don't have tools/machinery, so I just sank some poles into the ground and weaved some rope back and forth between it and hung a plywood board saying, "Do not enter on it," and he just ran through it with his truck. I've heard PF people gaining ownership of land after using it freely for a period of time, but I have no idea how long that is. Furthermore, he's a bit old-fashioned, or I should say a pig-headed sexist, and I'd be afraid to get into a conflict with him out here. Any advice would be appreciated. Short update. I spoke to a lawyer who was helping take care of time-sensitive issues and will help me through this. As I feared for my safety, I will not be visiting the home until this is resolved. Update. The neighbor had an accident on his property and will no longer be an issue. His heir and I settled out of court. The county is still figuring out how much the fines will be, but they will be quite sizable, and part of the settlement was the agreement that the neighbor's estate will cover all fines due to the work. Next one is titled, Tennessee, Mississippi, I take prescription medication for ADHD. Started a new job and drug test collection site, released a preliminary result to employer of me failing drug test. Company rescinded job offer despite a clean result from lab. Left old job for new one, and now I'm unemployed. Employment law. 2 locations because I live and work in TN. Drug test collection site is in MS. Not sure if that matters, but I want to disclose anyway. Here's the story. I have ADHD and have a prescription for medicine that will show up on a drug test. Never had any issues before. I would usually go give the sample and tell the collector about my medication and even show them the bottle. They always tell me the sample is analyzed at the lab and I would be called for any issues. I would always get a call by the lab informing me of the positive result and I would give them my prescription information. Upon verifying my prescription, the lab would send back a negative result. No issues whatsoever. I was offered a new job and as a result, put in 2 weeks' notice with my old job. During the interview, I was told I would have to take a drug test and asked if there would be any issues. I told my manager there would be no issues. On my first day, my manager told me to leave an hour early to take my drug test, for which I would be paid. I went to the collection site, provided my sample, and informed and showed my bottle to the collector. As usual, they told the lab will contact me for that info. After providing my sample to the collector, they did a preliminary test with those stripped things. To no surprise, it came back positive for the category of what my script is for. I reminded the collector of my prescription, and I was told it is being sent to the lab and I will be contacted by them. I didn't think anything of it. Just business as usual. On the way home, I get a call from my manager, and she says there was an issue with my drug test. I immediately tell her it's because of prescriptions, and it will be cleared up with the lab when they analyze it. She seemed positive about it, saying she believed me when I told her I would have no drug test issues and still believes me about this issue. But in the meantime, I should not come back until it is cleared up with the lab. I understood her position and agreed, knowing it would just take a day or two and things would be cleared up and I would be back to work. Just to speed things up, I called the lab the next day and was told they don't have my sample yet, but they marked my name as priority, so I will be called by the MRO as soon as it's analyzed. I get a call the next morning by the lab, give my script info, and he verifies it while I'm on hold. He comes back on the line and tells me everything checks out and he is sending back a negative result. I immediately call my manager and tell her that it has been cleared up with the lab and she will get back a negative result. She tells me she will contact me as soon as she hears from the lab. A couple hours later, my manager calls me and tells me that she got the negative result back, but HR has decided to rescind my offer. She goes on to express how apologetic she is and she would want to hire me, but HR has made this decision and her hands are tied. I asked her to explain more, and she says that HR explained to her that it is too risky, and also that I wasn't honest in my interview by saying there would be no issues with my drug test. Now, I am jobless with no income. I left a perfectly good job to take this one because it was more money. I'm not sure what to do. I still want this job and would like to resolve this as amicably as possible. The manager is on my side, but according to her, her hands are tied by HR. I feel this is the result of someone in HR that is a little overzealous in their job. ADHD is considered a disability, so could this be considered discrimination? Should I file an EUC? Should I get a lawyer? What can I do? Like I said, I left a job for this one, and now I have no job. Thanks in advance for your replies. Edit. Thank you everyone for your replies. I have a consultation with an attorney tomorrow. I considered reaching out to HR, but ultimately decided I should talk to an attorney first because it might not do any good, and I met with an attorney for a consultation Thursday. After talking and explaining my situation, she told me this strikes a nerve and hits very close to home with her because her husband and one of her kids has ADHD. I could tell how furious she was by her expressions and mannerisms. She told me that she would contact the company pro bono, but if it came to a lawsuit, she would take it on contingency as I could get punitive damages. I told her I don't want to sue anyone if I don't have to. I just want this job offer back, as I have been waiting a long time for a job like this. She also explained that if her attempts at contacting the company were unsuccessful, I could file an EUC charge and go through them before filing a lawsuit with her if needed. Ultimately, she told me this is discrimination. Due to an unrelated incident a while back, I have an app on my phone that records all phone calls, one-party consent in my state, and saves them to my Google Drive. I played the calls with my manager to the attorney. When my manager informed me of the preliminary result, I explained to her my prescription medication and my ADHD. The attorney told me it was good that I disclosed that at the time because now the company can no longer claim they didn't know about my disability, which would be a defense to discrimination. Also, this is an office job, and my meds and ADHD would not cause any issues in performing my duties. I was not terminated at this time, just suspended pending the lab test. The call after my lab test came back. My manager said the offer was rescinded and my employment was being terminated due to the preliminary result conflicting with the lab result, but I would be paid for my 1 day of work. As far as not being honest in my interview regarding the drug test, my attorney feels that is just a smoke screen. Any reasonable person would think that question is being asked specifically to illegal substances, so essentially, we don't waste each other's time if I knew I would fail. I had no obligation to disclose any legally prescribed medications. I asked about the collection site. Apparently the collection site is not directly affiliated with the lab. They just have a contract with the lab to analyze the samples they collect, disclosing the preliminary result, and she said she wasn't sure if they did anything illegal because I signed a release before providing my urine sample, and this is a separate issue. But she thinks an argument can be made for negligence. She would check up on it because she is not 100% familiar with collection sites releasing preliminary results in lieu of a lab test. She said that if it was a positive test for a substance that had no legitimate medical purpose, then maybe they would be okay releasing that, but even still, dipping some strips in urine is not a certified or accredited test. She said ultimately the point of having a lab test and MRO is to remove all potential variables of a false positive, and the point of the MRO is to have someone that is knowledgeable with what can cause a positive result and that can analyze if that positive result is valid or not, to prevent sending false positive results back. If it comes down to a lawsuit, she will name the collection company as part of it, but ultimately this is about the company discriminating. Anyway, my attorney called me the next day saying she had a conference call with the head of HR and their legal department. When she initially talked to the head of HR, he had been on vacation when all this went down, and he had no knowledge of my situation and would look into it and get back to her. He called her back with legal on the line, and they decided to reoffer me my job and pay me for all the time missed. My attorney goes on to say they want to have a conference call with me present and if I could come into her office that afternoon. I agreed. When I was at her office for the conference call, those present on the call were the head of HR, legal department, my manager, my attorney, and myself. Essentially, this call was an apology to me. The head of HR profusely apologized for this. He went on to tell me that this decision was made by someone new in HR, and despite the head being on vacation, he always makes himself available to his employees, and he should have been consulted at the very least. If he had known about this, he would have gone with the lab result, and we would have never been in this situation. He went on to say that he talked with the rep that decided to rescind my offer, and although he was apologetic, the head of HR felt that the rep did not fully understand the legal position he put the company in, and he is no longer employed with the company. They want me to come back on Monday, tomorrow, to continue my employment. He stated that my manager spoke very highly of my qualifications in interview, and they want nothing more than a person with my background on their team. He even said he would treat me and my manager to lunch Monday. He told me that they will give me a private office to accommodate my ADHD. I told them that wasn't necessary as I'm perfectly capable of performing my job in a cubicle like everyone else, but he insisted. So now I have my job back, getting back pay, have a private office, and being treated to lunch by the head of HR. I owe much thanks to this community for all the advice and support you have given me. I wish I could personally shake hands with all of you. I was so scared before reading your comments. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Edit. I'm going to disclose my medication. I take Vyvanse. A lot of people assume I'm taking Adderall. I used to take Adderall, but my doctor suggested I try Vyvanse when it came out. Although similar and made by the same company, Vyvanse is a much better medication for me. The release is more controlled, it's not as intense as Adderall, my appetite is not affected, I sleep much better with it, and it doesn't give me the crash that Adderall does when wearing off. Thanks for listening.